Yeah, so I was asking like people about if they would be free today to come into the sound studio and if they would be okay with me recording a conversation with them or like about faith. And that just made me start thinking about other things. Like, okay, if we're talking about faith, then I could also make them pray, maybe, because I was planning to pray uh, whilst I was here in the studio as well, so I could put it into my work. And then I was thinking, okay, maybe I can have others pray as well, and maybe I could overlap those two things. So if you have, let's say, my painting, and there is sound coming out of the painting, then instead of it just being one recording, um, one singular sound, I could like layer multiple people talking over each other in that same audio piece or track. And then I started thinking, wait a minute, the choir kind of does this. The choir. And then I was thinking about music, and at first I was like, kind of reluctant. Like, okay, maybe I don't want to use music in my practice because when I was doing the sound studio induction and talking with the person that was leading me through that, I asked about copyright, and they were clarifying that even if, let's say, the author like has died, like I would still have to record my own version of their song, maybe. Um, so let's say there's like a really, really old person that made music, like Bach, I think, was the example that we talked about at the time. Like Bach, I don't know how you pronounce his name. So there are like recordings of his there are recordings of his music found which you can find online, but like I wouldn't still be able to use those recordings. I'd have to like record my own like version of that song. So essentially, I'd pretty much have to like play the song myself, which like I'm probably not gonna do because I'm not skilled in music. I enjoy listening to music, and I was only thinking about incorporating music into my work because music is so powerful and it evokes emotions out of the person listening. And then I was thinking, yeah, in context of choir music, or like music which you would kind of think is in a cathedral, like even people who don't believe kind of find those those kinds of music like pleasurable to the ear. So that would be an interesting way of also maybe making my work more obviously of the theme of Christianity. But other than that, what? So I think I'm kind of being forced into asking another person to help make some music for my project because I'm not capable of doing that myself, at least to the skills that I would like to, because again, like I said previously, I want skill to be present in my work. So I'm aware that in terms of creating music, I do not have those skills. So there is a student in my fine art course in the same year and classroom that is also Christian, and I'll probably ask them if they are able to make music and collaborate with me on that. But other than music, I was thinking of just inputting like samples and recordings of people praying on top of like choir like music and people praying. So when you enter into the room or wherever the painting is, you start hearing maybe voices from different directions. So that's maybe I can do that with the playing around with the left and right ear thing, so that maybe from one side of the room, yeah, you can hear one person praying, and then from the other side of the room, you can hear another person maybe singing. Actually, there is an artist that did something like this. It's coming now to mind, but I don't know their name. But they did kind of like have speakers in a room, and these speakers were positioned in different places, kind of in like a circular line looking thing, and out of the speakers came like choir sounding vocals of live people instead of real people standing in that place. It was just a speaker, and that artist was trying to, yeah, recreate the experience of sound being all around the room and it being like a unique sensation. So I guess I'd be doing something similar to that artist, but I can elaborate on that later more when I actually find what that artist is called. But what was I saying? Right. What was I saying? Yeah, and I was thinking as well, like, when you have that painting, other than singing, praying, uh, and discussing faith, I could also just insert different kinds of emotions which you can hear through sounds. So, yeah, when people speak, you can kind of sometimes hear the emotions behind their speech. What, like, whether it's being excited or a bit disappointed. Like, you can voice act those things intentionally, but it can also be unintentionally. So, like, at the beginning of this recording, I actually was excited, and I wasn't faking that, but I wanted to capture it. So, that's also why I was saying that. So, I might use a sample of my own voice being excited to, and layer that on top of other sounds to kind of, when I'm assuming that when this viewer or audience is going to hear that amongst all the other recordings, that they will think that that emotion that they're hearing with through the sound may be associated with the artwork. But then I think that would also add complexity and depth, which I like and want to be present in my work. How would it be added? I think the complexity would be present because of the sounds coming from different places. Um, because the viewer would feel maybe surrounded by these sounds, and having that feeling of being surrounded maybe gives off a sense of complexity and maybe meaning, because emotions can imply meaning, or like that's what certain people can associate emotions with. They may think that they are meaningful in nature, and I want my work to have meaning as well. But another thought I had was, instead of maybe having one voice speaking or on one part of the room, I could also have it transition to then slowly like move to the other part of the room. So the voices are kind of like moving around the space. Um, yeah, that would be so cool. And then I was thinking of having, like, yeah, the music be present among that and not just people speaking. So when you have a song, it doesn't just consist of the vocals, it consists of like music. I don't know how else, what other words to use other than music. But I would like some of that in the background as well, maybe more so atmospheric music. I'd have to probably give examples of atmospheric music to better communicate what I have in my head, because I'm not sure how to describe what I have in my head. Um, but I'm not talking about atmospheric music that only tries to focus on sound effects or creating a sense of immersion in the environment. But what I mean by atmospheric music is more so like music that plays with your emotions, if that makes sense. Um, More calm music, maybe like slowly moving from pitch to pitch or tone to tone, kind of like a wave. I'm imagining sound that sounds like a wave, but not a literal wave of like the sea, but more of like a wave of different kinds of tones or sounds. It's hard to explain what I have in my head.